Hello, everybody. All right. So, welcome to our last session. Kind of makes me sad. But hopefully we've gotten everything that we need out there. So, for some reason, this is the first one we're catching. The previous however many videos have gone over our DBT skills book. It is the second edition of Marsha Linehan's Skills Training Handouts and Worksheets, which is the group format for dialectical behavior therapy. And as you are aware, the world is pretty weird right now. And just a message for those of you that are trying to get into therapy. Every therapist that I know right now has a waiting list 2 months long, myself included, like literally months and months long before people might get out and there might be a spot for somebody that might be able to come in. Therapists are so like overwhelmed with the demand that they can't answer all the phone calls and answer all the emails because they're so busy trying to like see the people that there's just not enough time in the day, which is awful and is so unfortunate and it's unavoidable. You know what I mean? I hear people being so mad because they can't get in and there's a waiting list. How can this be? And I'm miserable and I'm suicidal and I'm in pain and I'm hurting. Why can't I see somebody? It's a systems problem. You're not wrong. It is horrible and atrocious. And insurance and costs and fees and accessibility, it is all super jacked. And the therapists that exist now that are trying to provide care now only have 8 hours in a day, 10 hours in a day, and are trying to navigate doing teletherapy now and get reimbursed now and having fees that will cover the da 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 da. So, point being, that's why I did this series in the first place, is to try to just put a band-aid out there for anybody that is trying to get in to see or trying to get into a program. DBT in particular is very rare. In Arkansas, where I'm at, as far as I know, there's only 2 or 3 maybe of us agencies that do it. The odds of having spots available are slim. What I will tell you is do keep calling, keep emailing, keep checking in, keep seeing if you're on the list. Like, you'll have to take the responsibility to just be a creaky wheel. And that's not right, and that's not pleasant, and it shouldn't be that way. And hopefully you can vote, or I don't know what any of us can do to like change the system, especially for it to change in the immediate future. But it's not working, especially when the world is falling apart, COVID, war, economics, etc., that we're all facing right now. There's just not enough. There's not enough helpers. So go back and watch the videos, study it as much as you can on your own. You can even find a therapist. So if DBT really is what you need, if you are that highly sensitive person, if you have those 9 criterion, if you think you might have BPD, or even narcissism or histrionic personality disorder, they're all kind of ish. They're all shades of purple. you know, find any therapist and show them this stuff and tell them this is what you've got going on. And as long as they aren't so sure in their minds about their opinions of those kind of disorders, as long as they don't have a stigma about it, as long as they think you can get better, as long as they're like a supportive, enthusiastic, encouraging kind of person, they can still be your helper in this process. Like, you can use them to help you do the chain analyses, to do the diary cards, to talk through the skills. Even if they're not specifically trained in this, you can bring this to them and say, I would like you to please help me with this. You don't have to be the expert in it, but you can help me basically as like a tutor as I do this self-study kind of thing. Okay, so today I want to just kind of review, and if anybody has some questions, answer them. We talked about addiction. I'm just going through and flipping through the book and thinking about what we may not have covered in depth. And look at me, I'm back in my summer office. I remember when we first started this, I was in here. So, full circle. Okay, so maybe let me just review what DBT is and what the modules are, and then go back to some of the general stuff. The dialectical behavior therapy came about in the 90s. Marsha Linehan is the chick. She later disclosed that she had these issues, and it was really kind of a self-healing process that she just is sharing with the rest of the world. She's a genius. She's kind of out of the business now. She's up there in years. So she created it, and it is very science-based, very evidence-based, lots of trials. It was initially developed for people who are suicidal. Then that suicidality kind of is often paired with this personality style they found, And so people who are chronically suicidal, people who self-harm a lot, people who are very impulsive, people who have these really strong emotions, people who tend to dissociate, people who have these chaotic relationships and chaotic life and impulsivity, and that, like, there's just this kind of, it paints this picture as a standard person who benefits from this kind of treatment. And that is called borderline personality disorder. Over the years, BPD has had a horrible stigma, and this idea that they're manipulative, or they intentionally throw fits, or use things against people, or don't regulate their emotions when they could because they did in that other circumstance, so surely they could now, so they must not be doing it on purpose so that they can get what they want. They don't have to be skillful. And even in the medical psychiatric community, the idea that you can't have BPD because you're likable. Oh, you can't have BPD because you have a job. Only people who are just kind of unlikable, hot mess, horrible, unsuccessful at life people are what BPD is. That's rude, and it's not true. Slowly, it is starting to, and I mean, not for nothing, that opinion comes because people with BPD can be like a hurt wolf, with his leg in a trap, and it bites and it hurts and it is dangerous, and so a lot of people have been hurt by these kind of individuals. So I mean, it's not coming out of nowhere, but thinking that it's the wolf's fault and the wolf is intentionally biting you when it's really just because they're foot is in a trap and they're in horrific pain and they don't know what else to do when they're panicking. Is different. So yes, be cautious, have boundaries, don't get hurt, but also don't be acting like, I don't know. In my personal, professional, theoretical stance, I believe that people are born good. I believe that we're all at our core good, and we become into a state that is not good. Poor choices, bad behaviors, hurtful habits, destructive tendencies. But underneath it all, we still have that core goodness in my philosophy. And I think that it is hard to work in this field if you don't come from that place. Okay. BPD, DBT was created for it. DBT is a 6-month course at the least, so that you can go through all of these modules in the skills book. Concurrently, you see somebody for an hour a week for individual therapy. The individual therapy is very structured. You talk about the treatment hierarchy is self-harm and suicidality first, then therapy interfering behavior second, and then quality of life stuff third. So even if you broke up with your boyfriend and your car caught on fire and a tornado hit your house, but you self-harmed after that, the self-harm needs to be talked about first. And then we can talk about your boyfriend, and then we can talk about your car, and then we can talk about the tornado. Like, it is very structured, and that we cannot be talking about anything else if you are hurting yourself and or trying to kill yourself. That's step one. I know all this other stuff feels more important. I know all this other stuff is very important, but it is completely counterintuitive and counterproductive and just unworkable if I talk about this other stuff and act like self-harm and suicidality is not important. It is the most important. And until we get that decreased, we can't go over and work on these other things. So it's the treatment hierarchy. We use the diary cards to help us decide what behaviors to increase and what behaviors to decrease, and then to track them all, and then to track the skills. And so that part is very structured, very regulated, because if you're somebody with BPD, your life is chaos, and you didn't have structure, and you didn't have boundaries, or sometimes you have too many. But in the typical kind of standard BPD mountain kind of person. And so we have to have that much structure in order to give us the external kind of workings so that we can kind of dig into stuff. In addition to the group and the individual, we have a consultation team, which is all of your providers. So whomever is running group, whoever is seeing clients, whoever's providing meds, all of us meet once a week to discuss the cases. And so that it's not just me and my personality and my biases and my stigmas and my transference that is seeing this person. It's me and me talking to everybody else, and me getting therapy from everybody else, and me getting feedback from everybody else. And so it's a team effort and a team check and balance of like, whoa, you're being a little bit harsh there, or whoa, you're being really too soft there, or have you looked at it this way, or is this the right choice? And so you just have a bunch of brains working on a case instead of just one person. Because therapists are dumb people, just like all dumb people in the world. Like, we can get it very wrong, and so we need checks. And also, like, it's heavy working with people that want to die. It's heavy working with people that want to harm their bodies or destroy their relationships, or every person that has this constellation of symptoms also has trauma. Like, I've never not seen it. It is a trauma disorder. And so it is heavy working through somebody's trauma with them and carrying that grief and that pain with them and holding the flashlight as they look through the scattered destruction of their life. Like, it's a lot. And so therapists also need to, kind of share that burden with other people as well. So you have the consultation team, and then you also have the phone coaching, which is just a lifeline. It's a phone a friend. It is a tutor in the moment of trying to use the skills. And it's also very structured. It is not an extra session. It is a short 2-minute, 5 minutes, little text of, I tried to use the skill. It didn't work. I don't know which skill to use. Can you point me in the right direction? And it's just a little, it's not a big thing. It's not a comfort. It's not a security blanket. It's not a friendship. It's not any of that other stuff. It is a, let me help you get on the right track as you're trying to learn this thing. And sometimes that does, it is in the realm of crisis of, I am about to do something really stupid. What's the right thing to do? And maybe that is to go to the ER or go check into the hospital or go stay with some other person that's safe, or, you know, literally talking somebody off the bridge. But if that's the way it's being used all the time, it's being used wrong, right? Phone coaching should have been used prior to you getting to the point where you want to go do something horribly impulsive or life altering. Let me also just remind y'all that, like, there are national resources, I'm sure you know, but it is 1-800. I think it's 247. You can text 741-7441, and that'll get you a crisis text line. Just Google. That's also Brave. Oh no, text Brave to 741-7041. That can't be the 800-273-8255 is also always up. So there are people, and I've gone and worked on it randomly until it's staffed, which people like me that are like ready and willing and waiting on the next phone call. So there's no reason not to call them. Call them. That's what they do. They clock in, they do that, they clock out, they're ready, they're willing, they're trained, they're capable, they will help. There's no reason not to do that. In fact, do it ahead of time, you know, get comfortable with it. Know that that is a resource that will help you. So that is a heavy thing. And in DBT, we're very well acquainted with it. You know, it's not a scary thing that should be like whispered and talked about behind closed doors and shamed. Like, it's just another part of being alive. For some people, is also wanting to not alive, and that should be talked about, and that should be normalized, and that should be directly worked on. Like I said, first priority. Like, we got to get you to a point where you have a life worth living. That's the whole like tagline of DBT, is having a life that's worth living. Being alive in a life that sucks, like, what are we doing? And so that's not necessarily having like just oodles of joy and pleasure and just rainbows and unicorns. It's having value, it's having purpose, it's having meaning. And then, you know, if you're lucky, you get those little sprinkles of pleasure and joy. But we can all find a point to existence. And that actually goes towards your values and goals, which in our book is the stress tolerance. Page 253. I can't emphasize enough how important it is to figure out what you give a care about. My own personal, I was just talking about this, but my own personal motto, creed, purpose, point, I have decided, and it's been this way for the past 20 years, and it hasn't really changed. I want to ease suffering, I want to love, and I want to create. If I am attaining those three things, if I'm moving in that direction and those three guiding stars, then that is a successful life to me. Now, whether I'm easing suffering through teaching or teaching other people to do it or directly doing therapy, or maybe I'm just like, I don't know, I could be like a massage therapist or giving compliments to people at the grocery store, or being a nurse at the Boy Scout camp and like cleaning out scraped knees. Like, that is easing suffering to me. Anything that falls in that realm of just trying to help decrease the amount of suffering that exists in the world, I feel about that, and I feel like I can go to something like, if I am loving my family, my friends, people at large, that's a suffering. And if I'm creating, whether that's a garden or a sculpture or a painting or a cupcake or a muffin or a room, if I'm creating and making into existence stuff, and that's really it for me. Like, I like to, achieve things, and I like to learn, and I like to have self-development. I like to have spirituality. I have a bunch of second and third tier values as well, but that's like my guiding stars. And I can do those three things whether I'm able-bodied or whether I'm totally handicapped. If I was like bedbound, I could still say nice things and give compliments to my caregiver. I could still create, stories and tell good stories. I could still love my dog, like, obviously that wouldn't be the life altering, life shattering, major milestone accomplishments that could be achieved. That doesn't matter. 2 inches or 2 miles is still going in the same direction. And that's why values are just so flippin' important, because you have to know the destination, not the destination, but the direction. You have to know which direction you're going. If you're going in that direction, you are succeeding. I'm preaching right now, but hear me, I believe it. If you're moving in the direction of the values, you're succeeding. It doesn't matter how hard it is, and it doesn't matter how slow you go, and it doesn't matter if it takes you your entire life to create one story. The whole life you were working on that story, you were heading in that direction. Who says how fast you're supposed to go? It's more pleasant to go quickly and have a whole bunch of successes. Or whatever. Slow and steady. One book, one story, one poem, one campaign, one road that was cleared of trash. Like, okay. It's funny. And these values are what makes life worth living. Relationships, emotions, and values. Like, those are easy things. But if you can get those three things going, you'll be straight. And once you get a life that's kind of going and stable and meaningful, then you can go and work on the trauma stuff. Then you can go and heal your own wounds. Then you can go and ease your own suffering. Then you can go through and shine the light on, like, oh, that's maybe why that happened, and that's how that influenced me here, and the emotion that needs to come out of that. Trauma work is crucial and is always the second stage in DBT. Stage 1, get your life together and stop being a hot mess. Stage 2, work on your trauma. Stage 3, welcome to normal existence. Stage 3 is where normal, average human beings that haven't had a crappy life and aren't super sensitive exist. Lucky them. It's just normal, like depression, normal anxiety, normal, I hate my job, normal, I want to get a divorce, like just normal life existence problems. Stage 4, should you be so lucky, is purpose, the point of existence, spirituality, like existential, self-actualization, kind of like enlightenment realm. Make it up to that point, man. Think about it. And it's not like you get to one point and you stay there forever. Like we'll go up and down through those. And DBT talks about a house. And so the first stage is the basement, and then the first floor, second floor, and like up in the attic. Know your emotions. If you don't know them, if you can't name them, if you can't understand, like I'm feeling bitter because this is what my body feels like, this is what my brain is doing, and this is what my face is doing, or I feel melancholy, or I feel exasperated, or I feel paranoid, or I feel whatever. You know, the big emotions, the secondary emotions, the tertiary, and the third something. The 4th level, the 5th, the 29th level of intricacy in the emotions. Memorize them, understand them, name it to tame it. If you can put a word on it, you can start to, you know, it's like being a magical witch. Like once you name that huge force inside of you, you can start to direct it, you know, and you can take your sadness and you can have grief and tears, and you can write a poem about it, and you can speak it out to other people, and you can plant a flower in your beloved's name, and you can direct that energy. If you don't even know what's wrong, it's just this constant bombardment of intensity and sensation and pain, and you're not going to be able to process it out, which is kind of what health and therapy and healing is. So I know what it is before you can start. Wield it. And you know, fear can be a very great, powerful thing if you can wield it, if you can put it in the right direction, if you can make it, you know, righteous indignation that changes the world. Anger gives you power and force and motivation and movement. It's a beautiful thing, or it will burn you alive. Step 1 is using it, and wield it is knowing it. So know your emotions. Behaviorism is the underlying point of all of this. We talked about that last week, of know like what your behaviors are, which is what goes in the diary card. What behaviors do you want to increase? What do you want to decrease? What are the rewards? What's the reinforcement? What's the punishment? And then opposite action, which is exposure therapy and all the different realms of the emotions. Know what the emotion wants you to do, and then if you want to decrease it, do the opposite of what it wants you to do. Distress tolerance is all of that polyvagal hacking your system to get it to calm down on its own. You know, like if you're stressed out, they give propanolol, which is a beta blocker, to like, I don't know, like a musician at Berkeley, and they're going out to perform, and they're kind of anxious, excited, stressed, and that tenseness will make their music worse. Sometimes they will take a beta blocker to like chill their body out so that they can perform better. That works the same way as distress tolerance skills work, by decreasing your heart rate, and then you're not anxious. You decrease your speed of your breathing, and then you're not anxious. You turn on that vagus nerve, you activate it, and then you're not anxious. You know, you're not anxious if your body is not anxious. Anxiety is the thoughts and the physical sensations and the behaviors. If you stop doing the behaviors, if you redirect the thoughts and kind of challenge them, and then you have the opposite physical sensations. If you're breathing really slow, if your heart rate's really chill, if your blood pressure's low, if you're not sweating, if you're having saliva, if you're having like a guts movement, then you're going to be like, oh, I'm not anxious anymore. So the stress tolerance is going in and hacking that physiological system and getting your parasympathetic nervous system to come on and undo the fight, flight, freeze, fawn, panic alarm system. You need that, and you need to teach your kids that, and you need to teach your nephews and your aunties and your grandmas, and every human being needs to know how to manually override their thermostat. And then under it all, and then of course then personal effectiveness and going through the 4 modules. Emotion regulations, know your emotions, distress tolerance, be able to manually override your, it's not really emotion, it's sensation, it's distress, it's activation, it's excitement. You know, your body doesn't know whether it's fear or excitement. Your body just knows it's turned up. Being able to turn down the heart rate, turn down the activation of your system, stress tolerance. Interpersonal effectiveness, how to deal with relationships in the world. Very important, very complicated. Some people are natural at it, some people are taught it. If you don't know how to do it, interpersonal effectiveness will teach you some of the stuff. It doesn't cover all the stuff you're going to need to know to be a human in a human world, but most of the big things. And then lastly, it's mindfulness. You can't do any of this stuff without mindfulness. And I really haven't talked about mindfulness a lot. I'm sure I did the first few sessions on mindfulness, but in like a real DBT course, we would go over mindfulness between every different module. And so you do 2 weeks of mindfulness and then distress tolerance, 2 weeks of mindfulness and then emotion regulation, 2 weeks of mindfulness and then interpersonal effectiveness, 2 weeks of mindfulness. That's the course that takes 6 months. But you do mindfulness over and over and over and over again, constantly, every day. It's not enough to think about it. You have to practice it. It would be like trying to get good at like basketball without ever practicing it and just thinking like, oh yeah, I know about basketball, and you dribble and you shoot and stuff. Like, cool. Are you actually doing it? Sit on your mat. You can't do it without it. You just have to practice it. And the biggest misconception with mindfulness is that I'm doing it wrong if I'm having thoughts. I'm doing it wrong if I get distracted. I'm doing it wrong if it's unpleasant. It's supposed to be unpleasant, and your brain is supposed to be distracted the whole time. That is so normal. That is what brains do. I'm just up on a pedestal today. You're not doing it wrong. That is mindfulness. That is like saying when I hike up the mountain, my legs are sore and it's hard and I get winded. Yeah. That's what hiking up a mountain is like. It's hard. You're not doing it wrong. And it is also true that after you do it 1,000 hours and 1,000 times and 1,000 days, it's not so itchy, you know, especially at first, it's real itchy and you're just like, oh, it kind of makes you want to crawl out of your skin, sit so still, especially with today's world and how, you know, we're getting these little dopamine rushes every 2 seconds and we're getting this distraction and that distraction, and like it's promoted to be flickering all over the place with your attention. I'm worried about my children like watching YouTube instead of like watching a show, you know, like YouTube is like this flickering of like blah, 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 and it changes every 5 seconds. Whereas a show like actually has like a plot and it takes a while and you have to like attend to it for a minute. I'm pretty sure that's better for your brain. And I mean, maybe it's just different. But watching a movie versus flipping through TikTok or Instagram or YouTube, a movie forces you to attend to it for an hour. The other ones don't. The other ones give us this boost of just like spazzing out. There's nothing inherently good or bad about either one, but if we don't have control of our own attention, it will be like a puppy that's just like running anywhere. And it's not a problem until you get stuck on thoughts about self-loathing, or stuck on thoughts about how much I hate doing the dishes and it's so terrible and so horrible and I wish I were blah, 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 blah. And you don't have the strength to pull your attention to thinking about the activity you're going to do tomorrow, instead of thinking about how much you do the dishes while you're doing the dishes. Or you don't have the strength to pull your attention to the sound of the water instead of how much you hate doing the dishes. You know, you will get stuck in really unpleasant mental spaces if your brain is not, or if your will is not strong enough to pull your attention to different places. That is the point of doing mindfulness. One of them is to strengthen your ability to shine the flashlight in different places, right? Your attention is a flashlight that is being shown on the thought, I hate doing the dishes, or the sound of the water, or the thought of tomorrow I'm going to go on a really fun picnic, or the feeling of my feet on the floor. And you can choose to shine the flashlight. Shine the flashlight where you want to. And while you're doing the dishes that you hate doing, you can be thinking about the fun picnic tomorrow and not be miserable. While you're doing the dishes, you can focus on the sound of the water the whole time and not be miserable. While you're doing the dishes, you can focus on the thoughts, I hate doing the dishes and this is so disgusting and I wish I was doing something else, and be miserable. Right? So where you focus your attention on will influence your internal state of misery. And if you don't have a strong grasp of your attention, it's going to go to like the stickiest one, and misery is the stickiest. I promise you, misery is the stickiest. You know this. So when you sit on the mat or on your bed or in your chair or wherever, and are like, all right, I'm going to focus on my breathing. And then you're thinking about the weather, and then you think about how uncomfortable this is, and then you're thinking about your foot itching, and then you're like, oh shit, I'm supposed to be thinking about the breathing, and then you think about tomorrow, and then you think, right, your attention is going to go everywhere, and you're going to be like, nope, breathing. And it's up here, nope, breathing. And it's over here, nope, breathing. Every time you pull it back, you're making this wrist stronger. You're making your ability to shine it on what you choose to shine it on stronger every time you pull it back. So when people say like, oh, I'm all over the place, I'm so distracted. Yeah, that's what your brain does. Just pull it back. It's good to be distracted. It gives you the chance to pull it back. You can't do any of the other skills without mindfulness. Mindfulness will save your life. And of course, it feels really invalidating when people are like, oh, you should just do mindfulness. That will make everything better and you won't be miserable and you won't want to peace out of this earth. It's not that simple. And it starts with that. So I get it when people are like, when I used to work at the VA, I had a veteran come in. He's like, I hope you're not just going to teach me how to breathe and crap. I'm like, well, yeah, kind of. And lo and behold, just how to breathe and stuff actually did make him feel a lot better. Okay, that's mindfulness. I think, I'm just reviewing all this stuff, but it's all in those former videos. I think we really have covered it all. I hopefully will go through and like rename all the videos and put in the specifics of what they're looking at so that they're more easily searchable. And as I'm doing that, hopefully I will come across if I think that there's anything else that has not been addressed that needs to be addressed. And as always, leaving comments, questions. If you do leave like a comment in here, it pops up somewhere and notifies me so I can come in and answer it. That's about it. I hope that this is a little bit of a, you know, what do you call it, this little donut things that you throw to somebody in the water. I know it's not gonna get you out of the water, but hopefully these things can be just a little bit of a break and a breather, because I know that life is so much right now. But have faith, have hope, keep trying, find your North Star and just keep paddling. And find your like-minded people, find your tribe, find other people out there that are also going in that same direction. There are a ton of groups, free ones on Facebook or Reddit or Instagram or whatever platform you peruse. Be careful, vet your sources. Look at the effects of these influences. You can get into some of those groups and they're just like, we'll drag you down with them, but there really can be some supportive stuff for free out there. And good luck. Thank you all for joining me. And I wish you the best, and I believe that it can be okay and it can get better, and we will keep walking the walk with each other. So goodbye, everybody, and get in touch with me if you